Ready to explore the latest trends in real estate? What are innovators in building planning for the future? The Ralph Bivens Project digs deep into the minds of key players in the industry and discussions with today's thought leaders. I'm Ralph Bivens. As a journalist who's covered the real estate and development industry for decades, I invite you to join me as we probe for new ideas and projects that will be making headlines soon. We love to ask hard questions to interesting people. When you've done over 100,000 interviews, you seem to get enlightening answers. Don't forget to download and review this podcast on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your audio inspiration. You can also watch and subscribe on YouTube or visit realtynewsreport.com. Welcome to the Ralph Bivens Project. I'm Ralph Bivens. Be sure to check out our website with a lot of news, a lot of information, realtynewsreport.com. And it's not password protected. It's freedom of speech, freedom of press. You can go in there and read what you want. And realtynewsreport.com. And I also want to give a reminder, a calendar marker. Mark your calendar for this date, April 18th. There's going to be a big event in town. And but I can't say anything about it yet, but I just wanted to tell everybody about that. We'll be back with more details about April 18th pretty soon. I want to welcome Jake Donaldson. He is managing principal at Method Architecture. And he's got Method as office. They're Texas Triangle company, basically, with Houston, Austin, Dallas, and San Antonio offices. And they've done some really interesting stuff. So welcome, Jake.
Yeah, thanks, Ralph. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I guess, this start with something a little crazy. The big news that I wanted to ask you about first is beer. Beer, one of my favorite topics. Huh?
Everyone loves beer, right?
But anyway, I know that your firm developed a tremendous niche on building the new craft breweries, which, I guess kind of combination of retail or hospitality space with the manufacturing of the whole thing. And there were a lot of them coming up, 5 or 6 years ago. And but we've been reading, hey, some of them are having financial difficulties now. And I know, I know you know a lot about that segment. What's going on with the craft breweries?
Yeah, good question. That's been a really challenging news cycle to kind of read and watch about because we've designed, I think in total, last time I checked our numbers, we have designed approximately 40 breweries, craft breweries and distilleries across the state. We've even expanded into Oklahoma and Colorado, doing some small craft shops.
40 of them?
40, yeah. And so that's everything from concept design to strategic planning to full-blown, renovation and build outs and ground up, Carbach, Buffalo Bayou, those sort of places. But yeah, the news lately about them, they got, and I'm, what's kind of fun about the brewery projects is you really get to know the people and the kind of craft brewing community. It's a very tight knit community, and a lot of those brewers have become personal friends of mine. And so hearing kind of I had the same question you did. I said, what's going on? Why? I mean, you guys were on such a run. It felt like the craft brewing kind of movement in Texas was really taking off. Even just not even that long ago, a few years ago, we had about a 5-year sprint where it's like every other day there was a new brewery popping up. But my understanding is that a lot of them got hit really hard coming out of COVID, with all of the shutdowns, shutting down retail, restaurant, breweries. They did eventually get some exceptions passed through the state to be able to operate. But, I think some of the damage had already been done. You can't just go from, depending on day-to-day taproom sales, and then just shut down completely and not feel the hit of that. So a lot of them took on debt, were already really strained with some of the cash flow, couldn't fulfill some of their distribution orders. And then it just kind of became a snowball of that they couldn't dig back out of. And so I think these now it's the opposite trend. It seems like every other day that you hear about a new brewery that's closing, and it's really sad for us. These are a lot of friends. We've designed a lot of these projects, and but I think what you have to remember is that you may be buying some of this craft beer in the grocery store, but these are all still small businesses. They're mom and pop shops. A lot of times it's like family and friends that have invested in it, or they've gotten crowdfunding on investment. So they're still, they're still very much a startup, despite the kind of notoriety that comes with being a craft beer brand. But yeah, I think coming out of COVID, they've just not been able to climb back out of that kind of
Look on debt.
Exactly.
A lot to carry if you're a small business like that.
Yeah. And, Ralph, much like the restaurant industry, breweries are very equipment intensive. So they end up just to get started, just like with a restaurant has to pour all this money into getting a commercial kitchen up and running. Breweries are the same way. I mean, they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on fermenter tanks and brew houses. And that's a lot of upfront cost to then go back and just have to sell in volume on the beer to try to make all that back up. So it's a big investment, and yeah, but apparently a lot of turnover happening right now.
Wow. Just talking about the general, the economy. We've had our ups and downs, and it's there's good places and bad places throughout the country in different sectors and things, and and of course mortgage rates and interest rates are higher and stuff like that. So there's a big impact. But just looking out, and kind of you're kind of on the front end, I guess. Architecture is kind of like the front end when it comes to construction and planning, and people looking ahead at what they're going to do next. Just in general, what's your take on the mood of the businesses now, their expansion plans, building plans? What's your feel there?
Yeah. So what we're seeing, and like as you mentioned at the top of the show, we're kind of in our sweet spot is in the Texas Triangle. We're a very heavy Texas influence. So a lot of my market data is based on that. But what we are seeing is a lot of the interest rates are definitely having an impact. They're slowing down the speed of development. And we have kind of clients on both ends of the spectrum. We work with a lot of small businesses, end users, heavy light manufacturers, but we also work with a lot of commercial real estate developers. And on both sides of that equation, it's really slowing down the speed of development. I mean, on the real estate side, even just as recently as like the last year or two, we could design, draw something, get it built, and the building, they don't have any leases or tenants signed up, but they could get full financing and just hit the ground running and then just know that it was going to lease. But now banks are wanting more peace of mind, wanting more security against that risk. So they're wanting more pre-leasing. They're wanting to know that there's actual, demand and people signed up to take that space before they'll just start throwing out money at it. I think a lot of the developers I've talked to it just takes time because how quickly the interest rates have risen. It just takes time. That can't just be passed through immediately to rental rates. It takes time for that to kind of flow through on the other side. So that's another thing that's slowing things down.
And I guess, I know that, I guess all over Texas, but Houston in particular is a major place for warehouse construction. Mm-hmm. Warehouse construction the last couple of years. What's going on there? Is the industrial still impacted?
Yeah, so at Method, industrial makes up 50-60% of our workload. That's what we primarily specialize in. And I will say industrial is not stopping. There are strategic pauses happening in some markets, or it's slowing down a little bit, but it's not stopping. There's still tremendous demand. Absorption is outpacing supply. So there's a lot of new activity happening, especially in Texas. It's a great state to do business in. But what I will say is that some of the industrial model is evolving a little bit. When I first got into the industry about 20 years ago, we would do a project and our goal would be to diversify the product on the site. So we'd try to do some cross dock projects, some flex, some front park rear load. We try to have a variety of clear heights and different depths of buildings and lengths. And then when kind of what I'll call like the Amazon phenomenon happened, right? The e-commerce boom happened in 2020 and thereafter. All of the e-commerce big box retailers jumped on board with this theme or this design intent to let's max out the site. We want the biggest bomber we can fit on the site. So then all of a sudden, all of our developer clients are asking us drop, as many million square footers on the site as you can fit. And now that seems to have stabilized and calmed down a little bit, we're seeing almost a return back to kind of traditional models of development where it's probably more better for the long term. Do what?
Not as many million square foot buildings.
Exactly. Smaller users, thinking more about multi-tenant, thinking more about servicing, small business owners, which I think is a good thing. These big buildings, when they come up due and you have 1 million square feet building empty, that's a very specific use that not a lot of people need. So in the long run, for the benefit and stability of our local markets, I think it's much better for us to insulate against some of the volatility, to have a diversity of project types.
I know you're also, in terms of, workplace orientation, you guys talk about work with clients on those issues a lot. Tell us a little bit about what's new trends there.
Yeah, so I hate when I do a couple of speaking engagements a year, and I hate bringing up COVID because no one wants to talk about pandemic and COVID. But between the e-commerce boom and then now the workplace shifts that have happened, I think a lot of these changes were already in the works. I think society was already kind of moving towards embracing technology a little bit more, having more work-life flexibility, using some of these cool technology tools like us right now on a video screen, right? Like talking and communicating. That's made, Teams, Slack, all these other collaboration tools have made it much easier to work and collaborate digitally and across the country. And the good thing is that the younger generation and demographic, and we have a large percentage of our workforce is a younger generation, that works well for them. They're not like, my parents, your parents, our grandparents, they don't live and die by a 40-hour work week and kind of sell their souls to their company. They have other passions in life, and they want to be invested and do a good job at work, but then they also want to have a life outside of work. And so companies have had to adapt their model a little bit. I know for us specifically, we've tried to make our business as human-centric and human-focused as possible, to bring in amenities from the outside, not make it feel like a corporate stuffy environment where you clock in, clock out, but to make it a place where our number one goal is to make our office a place where people are excited to show up on Monday morning and are excited to kind of to create something. And we've found that by tapping into that passion that people innately have, that you get much better work product on the other side. And so it's a win-win, right? The employees are happy, we're happier because we're getting better work product. Our clients are happier because they have engaged people working with them. So we have found that leaning into more progressive workplaces, more fun office designs, more amenities in our office space, we found that to be a very successful recipe for success.
What are we talking about here? Ping pong tables, or what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ping pong tables and the beer taps, those are all the kind of gimmicky stuff. And yes, we have all those too. But that's the stuff that they love to tagline in a social media post, 10 cool office trends or whatever. But I think it's actually deeper than that. For us, it's more about thinking about the way people work. And so at our new office at East River, which we had talked about earlier, we try to be very intentional about thinking about how do people work. And not everyone wants to go sit at a desk for 8 hours a day and just stare in front of a computer, right? Some types of conversations and collaborations, interactions require a different kind of space. And so our goal was to create a multitude of both private, quiet working spaces to very public, collaborative spaces where you can go in and throw out all the ideas on the table or up on the wall and have a fun environment that promotes creativity, and then every space in between, right? So our goal is really to provide flexibility in the types of spaces so that people can find the right space for the kind of work they're doing. So beyond the ping pong table, it's actually thinking more about workplace trends and how do you promote collaboration and engagement versus just how do you give them something fun to do when they want to step away from the desk.
Yeah, that's right. Well, East River, I guess you've moved your Houston headquarters there, and it's 100 East River, Midway, 150 acres, just on the edge of downtown, and importantly, it's on the border. They got, I don't know, a half a mile or something, maybe a mile and a half. They got a lot of frontage on Buffalo Bayou, and that's an interesting aspect too. But you've moved your office there in 2023, I guess. And tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think we moved to Edo originally in 2016, and then when this project came online, we were one of the first tenants in line for it, and signed up first to move in the building. So we were excited to be kind of pioneers and continue the East Side redevelopment. But yeah, to your point, it's right on the bayou. It's got just amazing views of downtown. When you stand on top of the parking garage or on one of the top floors and kind of look over downtown, they're just beautiful sunset views behind the buildings. And it's really, I love to tell people the East Side is really kind of this undiscovered gem still. There's a lot of authenticity over there. A lot of Houston's past, but then I like that these projects are kind of paving the way for Houston's future too. The Bayou redevelopment has been a game changer. If you haven't been anywhere along Sabine Street or anywhere where the Buffalo Bayou Partnership has already finished some of the redevelopment projects, that's kind of a glimpse into what the entire Bayou will eventually look like. And turning us as Houstonians thinking of the Bayou as more of an amenity and a draw, like a lot of cities do. Think about San Antonio and the Riverwalk, or think about Chicago and the river that goes through there, and you can take all those cool boat tours, right? We've neglected our bayou like it's just kind of an eyesore that we need to hide behind. But the bayou has a lot to offer, and I think the redevelopment money and funds that are going to it will make it a great amenity for Houston. So having our office on the east side, kind of in no man's land, was a no-brainer for us, because we like to be different than a lot of other firms. We are different than a lot of firms, so that really suits our image.
Are you in one of those freestanding buildings that they built over there, or are you in one of the bigger buildings?
No, we're in one of the office, the 4-story office buildings. They're kind of around the plaza in the heart of it. So we're attached to the parking garage.
The whole idea about connecting, a lot of what's happened with the Buffalo Bayou Partnership and the redevelopment along the bayou has been kind of on the other side of downtown, and this next phase they're talking about is coming on the east side of downtown. And of course, like you mentioned, the Riverwalk in San Antonio, what a thing, what an attraction. It's just like the aorta of tourism in San Antonio, which is a big tourism town. But yeah, would they do you think there could be maybe like a dock or something at East River that you could, let's go from here to another stop in downtown or something? And would that work?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, you can already get from Allen's Landing, you can get boat tours, and they have a few different options that the partnership runs. But they'll take you down to the port. They'll just do like a downtown historical tour. They'll take you down to the turning basin and turn around. That's just one small outfit running one boat like over and over and over again. But yeah, I could definitely envision a whole little sub niche market where you take people, and go bar hopping along the bayou, or even have like kind of little commuter ones going up and down. Can you imagine avoiding the traffic and just hop? I mean, you can go all the way up into Memorial on the bayou. So can you imagine hopping on a little boat and then just taking it down the bayou for a nice, pleasant morning ride?
Water taxi.
Water taxi, exactly. Yeah,
there are apartments there, so
Yeah.
Not, yeah.
I did pitch the idea to our internal leadership team, but my CFO and our legal team shot me down. They just thought it was too much liability for us to diversify into. But no, I've heard other people talk about it. I think it'll be here sooner than we expect.
I know the golf course they have there at East River. I guess it's East River 9, so it's 9.
Right.
But the views of downtown, there is no.
It's unparalleled. Yeah,
it's nothing like it. It's got best view of the skyline. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Houston really, I mean, it does not get enough credit for how beautiful it is. And I think I had commented on a LinkedIn post the other day that I had never planned. I'm from North Texas. I'm from Dallas, and I had never made a plan to end up in Houston. I just kind of ended up here like most Houstonians. And it really grows on you quickly. It's much more friendly, green. There's a very vibrant art scene and food scene and international culture. It's a city that has a lot to offer, and there's a lot of natural beauty as well. And I think when you're not from Houston, it gets this kind of negative rap as being, still the energy town or oil and gas town, and that has some negative connotation to it for some people. But when you get here and you experience it, it's really a beautiful city. Yeah,
I know. Can't judge a book by its cover. You need to get down and explore it.
Exactly.
Speaking of Texas, I was wondering if we kind of do some, snapshots about the Texas Triangle markets like that you're in. But this is a connected state, and a lot. That's where the future is going. Everything, all the population, all the growth is going to be in that Texas Triangle. But so we'll talk about Dallas. What's your quick take on Dallas and what's going on up there?
Yeah, so for Dallas, and I'll just speak to it through my lens of what the kind of work we're seeing. We have a lot of, we're still seeing activity, new breweries and distilleries. So that's kind of that's the silver lining side, is that the great thing, I guess, or silver lining, is that these facilities are already built out and ready to go. So having a new group that's ready and eager to come in, they've got a facility already functioning without all that upfront cost. So we're seeing a lot of brewery and distillery flips. We're seeing a lot of adaptive reuse up in Dallas, a lot of food and beverage related projects. Cold storage is still in high demand. And then industrial spec is still going stable and strong up there as well in our North Texas office.
I know they had a lot of home building and stuff around.
Yeah.
Too,
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, there's a lot of home building in Austin too. I mean, that's.
Yes, we can run the triangle if you want. I'll say on the Austin.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, perfect. until the rail's up and running, I'll do it manually. The Austin market. So my sister just moved there. I guess it was a year or two ago. And to your comment about housing, I mean, it is just so expensive to live in Austin. It is just unaffordably expensive. And on top of that, they are very slow going on their infrastructure improvements. We were joking in our office the other day. TxDOT had put out some communications about 35 upgrades, and it was just a never-ending list of basically them admitting that 35 will just be under construction forever. Right? Like it's always, because the interesting thing about these highway projects is the second that they finish expanding them, the demand has already outpaced that expansion because it takes them so long to build it. And so infrastructure is not keeping up. There's no mass transit, no practical mass transit there. So that's a limiting factor. And then cost of living is just outrageous. However, industrial, we've been very fortunate to kind of ride the industrial wave there. That was almost a non-existent market for warehousing and distribution, even just a couple of years ago. And so there's been a lot of product to come online. I think they're calming down now because I think they're kind of waiting to see what that demand will look like. A lot of the demand we're seeing in Austin right now is switching more towards the manufacturing side. What I'll call kind of the Tesla and Samsung effect. We're seeing a lot of ripple effect growth coming from them. So it's parts suppliers that want to be closer to Tesla and Samsung. It's light manufacturing facilities. And then, of course, Austin is kind of becoming the mini tech hub of Texas as well, right? Our own little Silicon Valley, but Texas style. So that's been interesting as well. A lot of corporate office projects, which, corporate office has been underwater for a while. So seeing kind of a new spur of growth in that sector is very promising.
Tech, it's, that where did Michael Dell found his company, Dell Computer, is in the dorm room there at
that's exactly right. Yeah,
that's an entrepreneurial spirit there, isn't it?
Exactly. I guess the one benefit of Austin being so kind of having such a boom and rush over the past 5 years is that we're starting to see a ton of growth come down that I-35 corridor and then even bleed out into San Antonio. So we just announced we're designing new headquarters and manufacturing facility for a new concrete plant out in Kerrville. There's a ton of stuff going on in Buda and Kyle. That whole corridor is just in San Marcos. I mean, there's just a ton of development happening along that corridor. And it's not all industrial development. A lot of it is just like you're saying, like rooftops and retail and just basic things to support these growing communities. And then I would say for us, San Antonio is probably our hottest market right now. There's a ton of
really
happening.
Okay.
Yeah. And part of that is servicing kind of even further south and southwest from there down into Laredo. We're seeing we have a tremendous amount of industrial demand in the Laredo area to support some of the stuff that's happening closer to the border and a lot of the goods that are being kind of coming across the border.
Really, that's you don't think about San Antonio being a hot market, but I know that I looked at some residential survey of residential sales or price increases or something in the past week or so, and their residential market hadn't popped up as heavily and hot as Austin, but it has grown, and that's probably some of the influx coming in as this development comes down into San Marcos and between Austin.
Mhm.
And, but Austin got it together. When you got companies like Tesla, just popping up quickly and hiring 20,000 people, like that. And, I think the Samsung, the price tag I heard on that plan is like 17 billion or something. Those are kind of growth generators that are going to change your city for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are very close to a widespread adoption of self-driving cars, to drone delivery packages, to all these self-driving trucks, to all these game-changing technology shifts. And I think Central Texas is going to be the heart of a lot of that, because they've already got a little bit more educated workforce in terms of professional level, whereas Houston has more of working class workforce. So it's great for manufacturing, but for the high tech pool of workers, Central Texas seems to have a higher density of it. And so they're going to be kind of ground zero for a lot of, and I think that's why, Elon Musk and Tesla, why they're picking there they know what they're doing. So that's why they're picking that region for relocation. But when all that stuff starts hitting the markets and rolling out, I think we're going to experience in Texas, and specifically Central Texas, kind of a second boom, second gold rush coming out of the middle of the state.
Yeah, and of course, long term, I think the population growth projections for distant future, that triangle is going to get more and more dense with population. The city's going to be interact more, and it's not that far. If like Tesla has a 1 million square feet warehouse way out on the west side of Houston, but that's probably they can probably get to Austin in an hour and a half.
Right. Right.
Our state's going to get smaller, but it's going to get thicker in the middle there.
And it's it's also with all of this being technology based. I mean, Austin also has a long history of semiconductor plants in that area, and so they're even attracting in. We've partnered up with a few EDCs in the area, or economic development committees in the area, to help attract international businesses who want to come onshore some of their electronics manufacturing and semiconductor manufacturing. There's a lot of companies looking out of South Korea, and I think some of this is related to Samsung's move there. So there's a lot of activity coming, a lot of manufacturing projects, and which is really nice to see, to bring some of that manufacturing back here local, so that local jobs and to kind of support Texas's roots in manufacturing.
Well, and of course, I know you spend a lot of time in Houston. Tell us what you're thinking about Houston. And here we are in 2024. It's still first quarter. What do you think?
Yeah. So what's so interesting about Houston? Where I spend most of my time in Houston is with my kids and family. We're in the peak of sports season, so I feel like a chauffeur or taxi for my kids, dropping them all over town. But when I'm not doing that and focused on work, Houston's really interesting because we have projects. I asked our team to kind of give me a rundown on where our projects are in the greater Houston area, and there is not one specific region that's hotter than others. We have stuff happening, like you mentioned, out on the west side on the I-10 corridor to be closer to Central Texas, out in Katy area. We have stuff happening in Jacino Port. We have a ton of stuff down in the port, northwest side, northeast side. We're seeing a lot of development on the south side of town, on kind of 288 down towards between 610 and then going down to Pearland. We're seeing a resurgence of industrial, and that part of town has sat vacant for a while. So we're really starting to see infill of both last mile distribution, light and heavy manufacturing, kind of all over the city. It's been really fun and interesting to watch. The only, I hesitate to even call it a negative, because I don't think it is. It's just a change. The only change from past years is that the pace of development is just slowing down a little bit to a more stable pace. I don't think that's a bad thing, because I think another thing that Houston is very guilty of is kind of these boom and bust cycles, right? So we are very guilty as a development community here of building too quickly and outpacing demand, and then we sit with all this empty product and kind of force a local recession on ourselves. And so I think that's the bright spot of the rapid increase in interest rates, is it's caused everyone to tap the brakes a little bit, kind of gut check the pro formas and numbers and make sure that these projects actually pencil out. So I think that's good for us. From an economic viability standpoint, long term, is to make sure that it's stable, smart development, and not just grow at all cost. And that's what we've historically been guilty of. So the other thing, Ralph, I'll mention is that these industrial projects, especially in Houston, I think of Houston as kind of the leader in industrial development. They set a lot of the trends that flow out to the rest of the state. I remember when we were quoting some of our first industrial projects in Austin, and there's a big learning curve for a lot of the Austin community. A lot of them have never done it. There just weren't a lot of case studies and precedent there. And so we were able to take a lot of our kind of strategies and lessons learned from the Houston market and apply those over in Austin. We've also seen a lot of companies, a lot of our clients have diversified. So maybe they used to have a portfolio in just multifamily or apartments, and now they've diversified into industrial. So they have kind of two pieces to their portfolio. So that's been interesting as well. And industrial is no longer kind of the redheaded stepchild of the real estate market. It's now a key piece of a healthy portfolio for most people.
Investors are there. People want to invest in it, buy the warehouses when they're filled up and stabilized and
right.
Stuff like that. But like you say, like out of e-commerce, that's where a lot of this came from.
Right. Yeah. And so it's, I think having the bigger names and the more money and the more public, having Best Buys and Amazons and those kind of companies neck deep in industrial, it's actually pushed us further along as a community into more high tech development. And that's another thing we're seeing rapidly change in Houston, and just the industrial market across Texas is much more leaning into technological trends, even in industrial design. Things that would have been maybe reserved more for office or corporate office where they had bigger budgets. Now we're seeing it become more commonplace in industrial design. So some examples of that would just be it was just Amazon that had robots or automation or automated conveyance that runs the facility. I'm seeing that even in small business users are coming to us and saying, yeah, this part of our facility is going to be completely automated. So no human hands will touch any of this. Even some of the breweries we're doing, a pallet of empty cans will arrive, a machine takes it off, unpacks it, puts it into a bottling line, it gets automatically filled, automatically capped, packaged, put back on an outbound package. And then think about if we have self-driving trucks, you may be able to bottle a thing of beer without a human person ever touching it. It's just incredible what's happening right now to watch it. And it changes are normal, right, for any industry. But I think what's really striking about this is the rate at which it's changing. It's like every year there's these dramatic advances in companies and business adopting automation, technology. We're seeing AI, people experimenting with AI becoming much more commonplace. It's not just for sci-fi movies anymore. Our business is experimenting with AI and doing a lot of automation, even in professional development services. So it's a very exciting time right now to be in business.
And of course, with some of these changes we've talked about, the rise and this, the deliveries and the e-commerce stuff that leaves behind. And of course, there's other changes like we talked about earlier about the office space being not used the same. So there's excess office space. So we've got these needs. We've got old regional malls that don't really work anymore. Sears has disappeared, and some of those old time department stores not as hot as they were back in the early 80s and 70s and stuff. And you got all that, and you got the office buildings, which vacancies high everywhere. It's high in Houston, it's high everywhere. And then you've got this thing out here about housing. There's the Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae or somebody said millions. We're the nation's 4 million houses short or something like a huge amount. That's the supply of housing. Even in Houston on the MLS, for a while there was like a 1 month supply, and people, multiple offers, people lined up. So the shortage of inventory of housing the change in, I mean, let's talk about adaptive reuse a little bit. What are your thoughts in that category?
Yeah, so adaptive reuse, we are seeing become much more prevalent for a couple of reasons. But I will say on the office to residential conversion, that is talked to. So I'm on the board of Urban Land Institute, ULI Houston. I serve as the programming chair, and all anyone wants to talk about is office to residential conversion. And I do too. I think it's so fascinating because, yeah, you have, exactly as you pointed out, you have this glut of empty office buildings that look very similar on the outside to what could be, it's all packed in glass, what could be residential. But when you start to get into it, and we've talked to some of our colleagues at Gensler and some other firms in the industry who specialize more in that kind of work, when you start to get into the nuts and bolts of how to convert these, there's all kinds of challenges, from codes to utilities to floor loading to floor plate size, which that is not easy to change. You cannot change like on a high rise, look what the floor plate size is. There have been some creative solutions. You're seeing more and more people kind of take the leap of faith and throw the necessary engineering and money at some of these projects to convert them, but it's not easy. It's not as much of a slam dunk as it seems like it would be on paper, right? But in terms of adaptive reuse in general, we've seen tremendous success in especially kind of inner city or more urban areas where you have buildings that have outlived their usefulness. I think back on like our MKT project with Triton and Radome on 610 and Shepherd, old, kind of 70s, 80s, very dated old warehouses, very low clear heights, so not really keeping up with the trends of industrial markets. And we were able to keep all of the structure and the framework and the walls. We partnered with Michael Shu's office, and we're able to kind of reskin those in some areas, blow out walls, and put in all new storefronts and convert all the parking lots into a very like walkable, pedestrian friendly retail mixed use project. It's got creative office, it's got restaurants, it's got bars. I mean, it's got a little bit of everything because it's in such a hot spot right there in the Heights. And so there's a lot of,
if you guys haven't seen MKT, that's amazing adaptive reuse. I mean, you should be proud of that one. It came out great.
Thanks. Yeah, those projects are a lot of fun to work on. They require a ton of creativity. They require the whole team to kind of get in a room and work through problems. But we've converted, industrial to retail. We've converted projects like that to breweries and distilleries. We've converted them to food halls. We've converted those to co-working spaces, creative office spaces. There's a lot of uses. I think you just have to find the right. So make sure you're actually filling a demand and not just doing it because it seems like it could work, right? And so having the right people, having the right developers and the right clients that have the right vision, I think is key to that.
Okay, Jake Donaldson, Method Architecture. Really enjoyed talking with you, and we'll see you around town soon, I hope.
Great. Thanks for having me on, Ralph.